By the time NHRA removed the gas coupe and sedan categories from its national event program in 1972, the gasser era was not nearly winding down. At the top level of the sport, it was over. 17 years after the classes had become part of organized NHRA competition, they were simply taken off the main stage. There was no long phase-out, no grandfather clause, and no mechanism that allowed the old structure to continue unchanged. The surviving cars were pushed into modified eliminator, and one of drag racing's most recognizable forms of competition lost its place at the national level almost overnight. The easy explanation is that funny cars and pro stock arrived and made gassers obsolete. That explanation is not exactly wrong. It is simply incomplete. The collapse was the result of several pressures converging over roughly the same period. The cars themselves evolved in a direction that weakened their visual appeal. Factory experimentation created a new branch of drag racing that became funny car. The match race economy shifted toward nitromethane. Detroit wanted current production cars on display. NHRA was becoming increasingly focused on professional racing, television, sponsorship, and corporate participation. Each force damaged the gas classes in a different way. Together, they made the 1972 decision almost unavoidable. To understand why that mattered, it helps to remember where the gasser stood only a few years earlier. In 1964, supercharged gas cars were among the biggest attractions in drag racing. At some NHRA events, they could draw more attention than Top Fuel. The Bakersfield March meet that year was so closely identified with the blown gassers that the rest of the program could feel almost secondary. Big John Mazmanian's blown Chrysler Hemi Willis ran 9.77 there, becoming the first stock body car credited with a 9-second pass. The reaction from the crowd was reportedly intense enough to interfere with the timing equipment. That was the environment in which the gasser became a national phenomenon. The match race system was booming. Stone, Woods and Cook, Arnie Beswick, Ohio, George Montgomery, Mazmanian, and other leading teams could be booked 3 or 4 times in a single week from spring through fall. Promoters sometimes paid more than $1,000 in appearance money for a single night in 1964. Serious income for a drag racing operation of the period. At the same time, the camshaft companies turned the rivalry into advertising. Isky, Engel, Howard, and competing brands backed different racers and used full-page advertisements in publications such as Drag News and National Dragster to attack one another's combinations and promote their own teams. The system worked because the cars connected directly with spectators. A Willis coupe with a blown big block, open headers, and slick still looked understandable. It looked like the extreme version of something a determined racer might build in a garage. More importantly, it behaved in a way that crowds could read instantly. The front end came up, the rear tires dug in, the body twisted, the nose pointed toward the sky. Those violet wheel stands became the visual signature of the class. People drove hours on two-lane roads to see them. Families filled small-town grandstands. Fans argued over Stone, Woods and Cook, Ohio, George, Mazmanian, and the rest long after the track had closed. That was the peak. The first major problem came from the gasser racers themselves, because the best competitors did exactly what racers are supposed to do. They made the cars faster. By the middle of the 1960s, the traditional pre-war Willis had reached obvious physical limits. Its short, upright body had never been designed for 150 miles per hour competition. The cockpit was cramped, the old steel shells offered limited safety, and aerodynamics became increasingly troublesome as power increased. Ohio George Montgomery had spent years extracting more performance for the 1933 Willis platform. These combinations evolved from Cadillac power to supercharged Chevrolet equipment and eventually to Ford's 427 S-weight C-camera. Every step produced more speed, but the fundamental body shape did not change. When NHRA rules opened the gas categories to later production bodies, Montgomery made the logical move. He went to a Ford Mustang built around modern race car construction. The Mustang was lighter, more aerodynamic, easier to package around a proper safety structure. and capable of numbers the old Willys could not realistically match. Other leading A/gas and AA/gas teams follow the same logic. From an engineering standpoint, this was progress. For the grandstands, it was a problem. The pre-war Willys and Anglia combinations were short, tall, nose-heavy in appearance, and spectacular under acceleration. Their replacement Mustangs and Camaros could leave flatter, cleaner, and faster. A modern tube chassis car might run 2/10 quicker and still produce less emotional reaction than the slower machine replaced. The sport had created an unusual contradiction. The cars improved while the show deteriorated. For motorsport, that matters because spectacle is not a side effect. It is part of the product. Once the old wheel standing behavior disappeared, the gas classes surrendered one of the things that had made them unique. Even before funny car fully captured the spotlight, the gassers have begun moving away from the visual identity that built their audience. The second pressure came from Detroit. In 1964, the factory experimental categories were already giving Ford, Chrysler, and GM a place to race heavily modified production machinery with direct factory engineering support. The cars were altered, but they still retained a visible connection to showroom products. Then Chrysler began moving the axles. The principle was familiar to gas racers. Short wheelbases, high centers of gravity, and rearward weight transfer helped put load onto the rear tires. Chrysler's altered wheelbase program attacked the same problem more aggressively by physically relocating the wheels beneath the body. The front axle moved forward. The rear axle moved forward even farther. Instead of working only with suspension geometry and body height, the factory changed the architecture of the car itself. Dick Landy's 1964 Dodge demonstrated that the concept worked. The cars left harder, transferred weight more aggressively, and reached the 8-second range on gasoline. For 1965, Chrysler turned the experiment into a factory program. 12 altered wheelbase cars were built, 6 Dodge Coronets and 6 Plymouth Belvederes. The front wheels were repositioned 6 inches forward, while the rear wheels moved 13 inches forward. Visually, the cars looked almost wrong. The tires no longer sat where the body openings suggested they should, but that strange appearance became part of the attraction. NHRA did not embrace the most radical form of the concept. So the altered wheelbase cars increasingly found work in NHRA competition and match racing outside the conventional NHRA structure. Within roughly 18 months, the next step appeared. A lightweight flip-top fiberglass body went onto a purpose-built tube frame platform, and the basic architecture of the modern funny car emerged. By 1966, Don Nicholson's flip-top Mercury Comet pointed clearly toward the new formula. By 1967, funny car had developed its own identity, audience, technology, and, critically, its own relationship with nitromethane. That development cost the gas classes more than another competitor. It took away their evolutionary future, the builders most willing to experiment, the engineering ideas that pushed hardest beyond production architecture, and the cars producing the most dramatic new performances increasingly moved in a funny car rather than remaining inside gas competition. The gasser had effectively lost its technical ceiling. Then came the third problem: money. Since the late 1950s, match racing had provided the economic foundation for many leading gasser teams. A promoter did not simply book an A/gas car. He booked a name. Stone, Woods, and Cook put people in the seats. Ohio George put people in the seats. Mazmanian put people in the seats. That star power justified appearance money, and appearance money allowed successful operations to race full-time. But the number of available weekends and paying promoters was finite. By the middle of the 1960s, funny cars were entering the same market. At first, their appearance fees were comparable to those of major gasser teams. Soon they could demand more. Nitromethane gave promoters something gasoline could not: fire, smoke, noise, header flames, and a visual performance that translated especially well as television became more important. A promoter deciding between a fast gasoline-burning door slammer and a nitro funny car increasingly had a simple commercial choice. The funny car looked more dramatic. Sponsors follow the same logic. Camshaft manufacturers and other companies that had once spent heavily to associate themselves with headline gasser teams began redirecting money toward funny car programs. Hardy Crane's $2,000 bonus to attract Ohio George away from Iskandarian represented the kind of money circulating around gasser racing in 1964. By 1967, comparable promotional attention was moving toward funny cars. Stone, Woods and Cook moved in a funny car in 1967. Other major gasser names followed the same path during the next season. These were not racers leaving the sport. They were changing categories, and every migration weakened the class they left behind. Once the headline names disappeared, promoters had less reason to pay premium appearance fees for gasser bookings. As those fees fell, the full-time match race business model that had supported the class began to unravel. The racing itself could still be excellent. The economics underneath it no longer were. The fourth pressure came from the identity problem. By the late 1960s, many advanced gas class machines had moved so far from genuine production car construction that the emotional link with street machinery was becoming difficult to defend. Tube frames, fiberglass bodies, superchargers, relocated components, and highly specialized chassis engineering made the cars faster, but increasingly less recognizable as something derived from an ordinary automobile. That mattered because the original attraction of the category had always included the idea that these were extreme versions of real cars. Detroit was watching the same transformation from another angle. The muscle car market was reaching its height in 1969 and 1970. Manufacturers wanted race cars that spectators could connect with the cars being advertised and sold at dealerships. Chargers, Boss Mustangs, LS6 Chevelles, and the other current factory performance machines. A class still visually dominated by pre-war shapes did very little for that objective. The manufacturers wanted something more directly connected to the showroom. The answer became Pro Stock. NHRA introduced the category at the 1970 Winter Nationals. Wally Parks was reportedly not especially enthusiastic about the concept in its earliest form, but the response from competitors was immediate. More than 40 cars appeared for the inaugural event, and National Dragster described the new machines as spectator favorites. The talent moved quickly. Ronnie Sox, Bill Jenkins, Diner Don Nicholson, Dick Landy. Major racers either entered Pro Stock almost immediately or began developing programs for it. And they did not move alone. They brought sponsor relationships. They brought engine knowledge. They brought fan bases. They brought manufacturer support. They brought the same camshaft company connections that had helped turn gasser match racing into a national promotional machine only a few years earlier. NHRA did not eliminate the gas categories in 1970, but their position had changed. The national spotlight was moving elsewhere. The factory attention was moving elsewhere. Much of the best talent was moving elsewhere. The gas classes became increasingly regional. For sanctioning body, organizing national events, that was dangerous. Aging equipment and regional followings had to compete for program space against Top Fuel, Funny Car, and a new manufacturer-supported Pro Stock category built around current production identity. By 1972, NHRA made the final move. Gas coupe and sedan competition disappeared from the national event structure, and the remaining cars were absorbed into modified Eliminator. For the racers who had spent years building a class, that did not feel like a smooth transition. It felt like a demotion. The frustration had a historical basis. Gas classes had been part of NHRA competition since 1955. During the nitromethane ban from 1957 through 1963, when Top Fuel was absent from NHRA events, the gas cars had helped carry the show. They drew spectators, filled programs, and helped build the audience during an important period of the organization's growth. Many racers believed the class had earned a permanent place. NHRA was looking at a different problem. By 1972, professional drag racing was moving toward television, national sponsorships, corporate backing, and increasingly dramatic performance. A 9-second, gasoline-burning full-bodied car had been extraordinary in 1964. 8 years later, Top Fuel machines were running in the 6-second zone. with funny cars not far behind. The promotional gap had become enormous. NHRA made a business decision. Whether that decision was correct depends on what one believes a sanctioning body owes to the categories that helped create its audience. That argument returned 9 years later. Modified Eliminator, the category that had absorbed many displaced gassers, was itself eliminated in 1981. The reaction at the U.S. Nationals was impossible to miss. More than 150 cars appeared in protest. Over 100 drivers took part in a slow parade past the Indianapolis grandstands carrying Save Modified signs. They were protesting at the most important drag race in the country, directly in front of the institution making the decision. NHRA did not reverse course. Modified Eliminator disappeared. That moment represented something larger than one class being dropped. It was the final public confrontation between two ideas about drag racing. The racers believed that pump gas, mechanically creative classes rooted in the sport's early growth, deserved a permanent national place, even if they could not generate the same sponsorship value as nitro categories. NHRA's position was effectively that the sport had grown beyond any individual class and had to be managed as a professional enterprise. Both arguments had logic behind them. Only one side controlled the rulebook. After 1981, much of the old gasser and modified culture retreated for the national structure. It survived at regional tracks, in garages, in private collections, and among racers who continued building and preserving the machinery outside the framework that had supported it for decades. Seen as a complete sequence, the disappearance of the gasser becomes easier to understand. The move from pre-war bodies to modern bodies made the cars faster, but removed much of the wheel-standing spectacle. The altered wheelbase revolution evolved into funny car rather than remaining within the gas categories. Funny car took the most aggressive engineering and eventually much of the match race money. The biggest gasser stars migrated with it, weakening promoter demand and appearance fees. Pro Stock then provided Detroit with the current production showcase it wanted and pulled away manufacturers, sponsors, and leading competitors. Finally, NHRA's broader shift toward professional, television-friendly national racing made the remaining gas classes increasingly difficult to justify on the main program. Any one of those problems could probably have been survived. All of them arriving within the same roughly 7-year period could not. By 1972, NHRA was not creating the collapse so much as formalizing one that was already underway, and none of it had been guaranteed. Different rules might have preserved the old pre-war bodied cars longer and protected the spectacle. A sanctioned home for altered wheelbase development might have kept more engineering inside the gas categories. A stronger match race economy could have slowed the migration toward funny car. Pro Stock could have been structured in a way that left more space for the older classes. But history did not take those paths. The more revealing development came decades later. Between roughly 2007 and 2012, nostalgia gasser racing began gaining serious momentum. The Southeast Gassers Association started in 2012 with only 7 cars at Greer Dragway in South Carolina. Within about a decade, the organization had grown to more than 100 cars competing across multiple states. A Discovery Channel series attracted television audiences reported at more than 1 million viewers. Other organizations and events developed the same appeal. The Nostalgia Gassers Racing Association in Illinois, the California Hot Rod Reunion at Famoso, and regional nostalgia programs around the country began filling tracks with the kind of machinery national drag racing had abandoned generations earlier. The Bakersfield connection is especially fitting. The California Hot Rod Reunion takes place at the same historic venue associated with the 1964 March Meet, where Masmanian's Willis recorded its landmark 9.77. The modern nostalgia rules are intentionally restrictive because the organizers are not trying to recreate the last, most technologically developed version of gas racing. They're trying to preserve the version spectators loved before the transformation. The Southeast Gassers Association bases its formula around 1967 era NHRA concepts. Gasoline is central. Manual transmissions and solid front axles preserve the mechanical character. Modern safety equipment is required, but the visual appearance must remain period correct. Organizer Quayne Stott has summarized the philosophy by arguing that 1968 was effectively the point when the classic gasser died. The cars became lower, the tires became wider, and alcohol began replacing the earlier gasoline formula. The nostalgia movement therefore preserves the class before the forces that ended its original national run fully took over. Its success also reveals something important. The audience did not disappear in 1972. It aged. The people who packed tracks, such as Lion's drag strip, grew older. Their children heard the stories. The cars disappeared from national competition, but their cultural value increased rather than evaporated. When promoters eventually offered that audience a convincing version of the old show again, the grandstands filled. That makes the disappearance of the gasser look less like a case of spectators losing interest and more like a specific business decision made under specific conditions. The cars were not removed because nobody cared. They were removed because the structure around them changed. Between roughly 1965 and 1972, the class lost its spectacle, much of its match race economy, many of its star competitors, manufacturer support, and finally institutional protection. Yet the machines themselves never stopped carrying the emotional identity that made them famous. They were built by machinists, farmers, construction workers, veterans, mechanics, and racers working in garages with hand tools, notebooks, and experience. They took production front suspensions and rewrote them until a full-bodied car could launch with its nose in the air. For roughly 15 years, they packed local tracks across the United States and helped build the audience that professional drag racing later inherited. Ohio George Montgomery's 1933 Willis, associated with his remarkable run of national success, survives in the Henry Ford Museum. The Stone, Woods, and Cook Swindler, the car Hot Rod, once called the most famous drag car of all time, was restored, preserving the story of one of drag racing's most important teams, including its place in the history of interracial competition. And the racers who carried Save Modified signs through Indianapolis in 1981 understood exactly what they believed was disappearing, even though they could not stop the decision. The strongest proof may still be found at a nostalgia race on an ordinary Saturday night. The tree turns green. A straight axle Willis leads hard. The front wheels rise. The crowd stands almost automatically. More than half a century after the class disappeared from NHRA's national program, the reaction is still the same. That is not simply nostalgia for something that died in 1972. It is evidence that the part of drag racing the gasser represented never completely went away.